Hi, I'm Brad, and since it's getting hot outside, I have a feeling I'm going to become more harsh on VR hardware than I usually am. It's that seasonal cycle. Pimax is a company that I have covered a couple times in this channel, but not too much. I am not a Pimax user, nor will I ever see myself in the future wanting to use one as my daily driver. There was a product that they were getting really excited for launching very soon. In fact, they technically did launch now, that I thought had some promise. In fact, I tried it last year during a Pimax Roadshow, gave it an okay review. There were some issues with controller tracking and other things. And then I tried at CES that had another different kind of issues during there. So I wasn't sure what they were going to do when they finally did ship out the consumers, and consumers would be able to give their ideas and opinions of whether or not it was worth spending all that money for this headset. Now, me not really being a Pimax user, I wasn't really sure if I was going to get one to review it because I don't really personally want bigger headsets on my head. So it wasn't on my radar. However, it started to become kind of forced onto my radar because there's a lot of viewers in the channel who were kind of DMing me and sending me emails talking about how they purchased one, and they were receiving units with a plethora of different problems. This started piling up, and I even got comments from other content creators who received units with a lot of these same problems too. So originally I was going to plan to make a sort of summary video talking about all these issues without reviewing the unit itself. So I put out a tweet saying, hey, if you've had issues, please email me so I can get a bigger sample size of how big these problems were. After doing that, just by pure luck, I found out one of my viewers lived very close to me, and they got actually 2 Pimax units sent to them, and one of them they were going to offer me to borrow for a week. Now, with that opportunity kind of given to me, I was like, okay, not only can I get the huge sample size from people having problems, I can also experience the device for myself, even if it's not a long-term review. So that's what this video is. It's kind of a mishmash and overview of things that I have heard from people, other content creators or buyers of the headset, and really my experiences with it as well, as bare bones as I can get, because there are definitely problems with this headset, even though I still think this is probably my favorite Pimax headset I've used, which isn't the highest bar for me, but yeah, let's get into that. So this is the Pimax Crystal. They announced it a couple years ago, and they were going to advertise these huge FOVs, these huge clarities, high resolution, all these other things. And not only that, they said it was going to have eye tracking, standalone capabilities, but also a DisplayPort cable that allows you to use it for a tethered PCVR experience. Now, it does have all those things in terms of hardware, but in terms of activating these things on day one, they are still quite far from that. I've seen everyday Pimax users even say that this launch of this product has been one of the worst that they've seen, even including all the previous launches that Pimax usually have some issues with. There's never been a perfect Pimax product launch. They've always just been a mess. Now, the first mess that people are running into, including other content creators that you might be expecting a review from at some point, but they haven't been able to because the biggest issue were they were shipping these things in older versions of Pimax boxes, namely the AKX box that is actually not big enough to hold this thing in packaging as it's shipped across the country. So there's this part here, this little plastic piece that actually will break off in shipping, and once the user actually gets their first unit, people are finding that they're completely snapped off so they can't use the top strap anymore. And for a headset this big, I would even argue you need a top strap, but even another one that you would need going to the sides, because this thing is quite heavy. I'm not the only one that thinks so, by the way. The person that borrowed this headset to me actually included one of those large side straps that people are using for their Quest Pros, because even though that their top strap did not break and they were a very lucky user, they still felt they needed an extra side top strap to make this thing better balanced, despite the fact that it does have a battery in the back, but this thing is pretty heavy. Pimax released a statement that every single person who gets this headset and has a broken strap will be able to get a replacement shipped to them as soon as they get the actual shipping and changes to the boxing materials solved. There were 3 content creators I was speaking to in private that also received units, demo units or review units that had this actual breaking issue. And one of them actually got back to me today saying they received a replacement unit, but they were pretty pissed off because even their replacement unit that they got sent from Pimax to solve for the broken head strap problem, also was broken. So that keeps delaying these review videos, and people can't get an idea of what the headset is from a wide variety of people because there's just issues in the way Pimax is shipping these things. Now, there's another issue with the launch related to hardware, and one of them is the fact that Pimax seems to be shipping different versions of lenses to different people. And I'm talking about the 35 pixels per degree lens. In the marketing materials for this headset, one of the biggest features was you're able to unscrew and magnetically remove lenses and place different ones, whether they have different pixels per degree or a different FOV or all these other sort of things. And for the 35 pixels per degree, they never said there would be two versions of that, but beta testers for the Pimax program were getting plastic lenses that they've been saying for a while are just not good. They have tons of distortions, whether it be an achromatic aberration or just the issue with the focal length being wrong, so things far away look really blurry, as I reported in CES. And not everyone is getting these plastic lenses. Some are actually getting glass lenses, which still have a little bit of problems, and I will get into that, but are way better in quality than the people that are just randomly from this lens lottery getting these plastic polycarbonate lens. The unit I'm using is actually one of the lucky few that got the glass lenses. They're very heavy, and that's actually the best way you can tell if you order this product whether or not you got a glass or plastic lens. The glass lens is around double the weight of a plastic lens. Now, if you did get a plastic lens, Pimax does seem to be actually rectifying that too. They posted on their Twitter today that they're sending out a bunch of tiny packages filled with these glass lenses, so if you do get either the first shipment or multiple shipments later on of the plastic lenses that suck, you will get these better glass lenses. Now, again, going back to the marketing material, one of the big benefits were you're going to get an extra set of lens included in the box, which were known as the 42 pixels per degree lens. And I've reported kind of multiple times, not only just from before seeing it or after seeing it, I thought the idea of changing out lens systems was kind of a gimmicky thing. I don't expect that many third parties to be able to develop their own lenses for the system due to the fact that I don't expect Pimax will be able to create the volumes for this product enough for third parties to really get into it. But actually trying the 42 pixels per degree lens at CES, I thought it was a terrible headset lens system. The FOV was extremely tiny, and it just didn't add much to the idea of just giving that to people for... I couldn't see the use case for it, basically. And I remember people were getting upset with me saying, well, it's nice to have that as an option. If you were one of the people that said that to me, I kind of agreed with that idea. Like, sure, it's good to have it, but it doesn't seem that the 42 pixels per degree lenses will actually ship at all. They seem to have come to their senses at Pimax to also agree internally that these lenses are just not good or worth it to ship to people. So they seem to have actually canceled any plans to ship or include the 42 pixels per degree lenses in the box. So you can kind of cross that out of the sheet that's on their website even that still says that you will get an additional set of lenses in the box. You will not at this moment. Again, going back to my original opinion, I still think that that gimmick just didn't make sense. I didn't think those lenses were worth including anyway. From even a Pimax perspective, it costs more money to get these made for, I imagine, less than 1% would even use these lenses. So it is good for them to focus on one pair of lenses that they can get all the distortion profiles and all these things solved. I think that makes the most sense. A next issue that is coming related to hardware launch is people are receiving different versions of this cable. Some people are receiving a fiber optic cable, which seems to be better quality, from what I understand, than a copper one that is actually even worse quality than this one. Now, I seem to have gotten the fiber optic cable. I've not really had any issues with the cable launch, but again, just like the plastic versus glass thing, if you did get the worst cable, you can contact Pimax to get the better one that probably should have come with it at the beginning. This was, again, another thing that Pimax beta testers even said that they kind of give a lot of feedback saying this worst cable should not be included with the launch, but it still made its way into products for some users based on what seems to be another hardware lottery. So those were like the biggest issues just related to this launch. I do have to give props to Pimax for promising to solve these issues, offering better customer service and replacements for people that are having issues. But I do want to talk about my impressions of the product overall, because even though they went over all these different things of how they're going to fix sort of this launch issues, these scathing issues, I do want to talk about the product based on this 1 week that I've had with it and really give my thoughts in the most bare bones way I can. So after using this thing for a week, this is not a headset that I feel like I want for myself. It is really just really heavy. I weighed it. It just comes right under 1.2 kilograms, which I'm not a stranger to wearing heavy headsets. I'm kind of becoming more of a stranger to it these days because pancake optics and systems are making the weight of gravity better. But there was kind of a variety of issues kind of mixing together, making this heavy headset just not worth it for me. Now, I do want to give one pro for this headset. That is the main reason that people might be interested in it, and that is the resolution, and probably the brightness of it as well. These uses two 2880 by 2880 mini LED LCD displays with a quantum dot layer to give better color gamut. Another benefit of the mini LED was local dimming, the idea that you can turn off parts of the backlight to kind of give a better black scenario, just again, very similar to the Quest Pro. Now the issue is, from my understanding, the actual amount of zones per eye for the local dimming is pretty low, so you will notice a ton of blooming if you manage to get the feature working. For the first couple days I was using this headset, I couldn't actually get the local dimming to work correctly. When I was turning it on and off, it kept doing what seemed to be global dimming, whereas if it sensed a lot of light on the picture, it wouldn't dim individual zones, it just made the whole picture brighter or darker, which is not local dimming. But during one of my sessions, this thing actually crashed because we'll talk about how it like kind of does use the chip inside the XR2 Gen 1 chip to kind of pass through all the information. But one time this headset did crash, and it kind of crashed my whole Steam VR and Pimax software, and I had to reboot the headset. And doing all that, just randomly out of pure luck, local dimming started to work from then on. It didn't do any software update that I was aware of, no firmware updates. It was just a weird thing that just happened and fixed the local dimming to get it working. Now, the next issue that I kind of noticed right away was I didn't feel that the 120 hertz mode that is being achieved or advertised for this thing was actually working. The main reason I noticed is because I record through the lens footage internally to test different things, and usually it's really good to capture a refresh rate with the same refresh rate as the camera, so you don't get that gray to gray banding or persistence issues that you usually get. So if this is a 120 hertz headset and I record with a 120 hertz camera feed, you can usually just never see any issues. But with this, when I was recording through the lens with a 120 hertz camera, I noticed that there was an issue where I could still see the scan lines going down, which made me very cautious that this thing wasn't actually working at 120 hertz. So then I started turning on FPS VR, launching a bunch of titles, and even though Steam VR said it was running at 120 hertz, and in the Pimax software it was set to the 120 hertz lab mode, no applications or games that were running according to FPS VR, and even internal, like for example the VR chat FPS slider, they were never crossing 90 hertz. Now, talking about how this thing has an XR2 Gen 1 chip, I eventually also plugged this thing directly into my computer and started running ADB commands to see all the logs related to all the processing that's done through the chip and connected to my PC, because this does have to be on. This headset does have to go into what sort of seems like a very basic shell of Android to actually plug into your PC. So even when it's plugged into PC VR mode, you are still using some sort of basic Android system. And even in the logs for that Android system, it still was telling me that it was only targeting 90 FPS. It kept telling me the asynchronous time warp that is included with Qualcomm chips, and it was only hitting around that 90 hertz range no matter all the different settings and choices I did. I went to the Pimax Discord, asked people if I can solve this, get the 120 hertz, and I saw other people asking the same thing, by the way, and went to other content creators, and they also reported the same issue where they weren't actually getting 120 hertz despite all these other sort of tricks that make you feel like that it was set to working at 120 hertz mode. So if you're interested in that 120 hertz mode, it just doesn't seem to exist correctly yet. I did things such as I removed this little extra cable on the side here that actually is like a sort of like a dongle. That's what some people were recommending to me. None of these things work, and I still can't get 120 hertz to correctly work. Next thing that does not work is, even though it has the eye tracking hardware, there is no eye tracking enabled for this headset. As far as I know, I don't know when. There's been different numbers thrown around of when. I don't even think Pimax beta testers have gotten the eye tracking set up yet. I heard in Discord some people were saying that it's Toby's fault that it's not been delivered to Pimax yet. So if you're interested in the eye tracking, is one of the main reasons you want to use this thing, because it's supposed to be able to do foveated rendering with certain apps, especially simulators at one point. That is not enabled at this point. One thing to note as well is the controller tracking works okay. It's a bit floaty. It's not as good as like the Quest 2 controller tracking, for example. It works, but if you're doing something like Expert plus Beat Saber, you're not gonna be able to use this headset at the moment. There is supposed to be a Lighthouse kit that can attach to the front here to make this become a Lighthouse tracked headset. But in fact, that's actually the main reason that the person who gave this to me to borrow, they told me that they're not going to use this thing until that comes out because they're Expert plus Beat Saber, and the controller tracking was just not doing it for them. It might be good enough for stuff like VR chat, but again, I don't know what kind of people are going to be wearing this for VR chat because the FOV of this headset is not even close to the advertised FOV that they've been putting out. I use very careful software choices to measure FOV for my headsets, and even this headset doesn't have as much FOV as the Valve Index. It's almost comparable in some ways to the Quest Pro, or even a little bit less than that in some ways. So if you want to buy this HMD for that 140 degrees or 125 degrees numbers that they say all the time that this definitely has, it doesn't come close to that. It just doesn't, unfortunately. And one final issue I want to report before I end this video is the glass lenses. They are pretty good, but they are not perfect. Around the very edges, you will still get a lot of that achromatic aberration. Things such as the edges of different software things will look different colors. Or, for example, the best example is when I point at things on the SteamVR menu with my laser pointer, the end of my laser pointer will be blue, but everything close to my controller's laser pointer will be green, just from the achromatic aberration. And one more weird effect with the lenses is it actually has a small sweet spot. Now, it's not the same sweet spot you might expect, such as like with the Index or the Reverb G2, where if you're not in the complete center, things will look like a blurry mess. It's not that kind of sweet spot. This lens actually has a lot of like sort of geometric distortions around the edges, and not far on the edges. I mean, pretty close. So if you are not directly eyes center adjusted for your headset, you will turn your head a lot and you'll see a lot of warping of the image because there's a lot of pupil swim, a lot of geometric distortion where things just warp. Things don't look straight across the lenses. And if you were to ask me whether I prefer having a sweet spot that looks blurry in the edges or a sweet spot that looks warped as you move your head, I would definitely prefer the blur over this because this has made some people feel uncomfortable. I even talked to the person, other people who have used this headset, again, content creators, and they have reported the warping as well, just different levels, and I'm guessing it's because that they have not hit that sweet spot, and it's much harder to tell compared to blur whether you are in that correct sweet spot. So yeah, that is my very baseline experience with the Pimax Crystal. Again, I would like to highlight that the one thing that I thought was impressive was the resolution. But as someone who's used something like the Big Screen Beyond or even other things similar to that, I don't feel like I want to wear this giant thing on my head to achieve that high resolution. Yes, it's a very bright picture because the LCD and all these other things, it gets to around 130 to 150 nits of brightness to my eyes, which is great. No issues with persistence or anything like that. But there's too many trade-offs, and this thing still feels like a prototype that is at my house and I can do a lot of testing with, even though I'm not that kind of person anymore. I don't want to receive a prototype headset that has these glaring issues, that has these launch issues, that I had to worry about if this little strap on this little plastic clip on my head strap will just break, and when I give it back to my friend and let me borrow this, they'll be upset with me. Like, that was something I constantly couldn't help but think all the time. So all in all, I will probably talk more about this with another person who has received 2 of these headsets and had issues within the next week. Mateo311. We'll be doing a kind of video together talking about this because I'm not the only one that feels this way about this headset. I'm really not. I know people think that I'm out to get Pimax, but really, you can't release products like this every single time and expect people to respect your company. It's not how that works. You might be a person that's totally okay with waiting months and months for all the promised features to maybe come to your headset, but the vast majority of people, even VR enthusiasts, just don't want that. And in fact, I only think this headset might be okay for you is if you're in a stationary sort of position doing simulators. It might be perfectly fine for that. But I'm not that, and a lot of people aren't, and that's who this video is mostly for. I hope Pimax does well, because this still is a much better headset than I've used from other Pimax products, but it's still not there. And yeah, good luck. Good luck. All right, that's everything. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.